Hey, what's going on, everybody? We're here to talk about standardized testing and how it's ruining education, part two. This time, I'm actually going to talk about an anecdote that is going to just sort of show how it can actually have an effect on an individual in a very personal way. So, a few years ago, I had a student do a senior project. It's the end of the year. As seniors, they get to go do internships and things like that. And this student became my teaching assistant. Um, Amazing individual, and you would think as a teaching assistant, they'd be learning things with me. But the truth is, I learned a lot and way more through him. And it really, really changed my life. I'll start by saying that the reason why this, goes to standardized testing in terms of, the main topic is because when I first met the student, they were extremely, presented extremely bright. They were in my computer science principles class. It's an AP course for those who don't know. It's the lighter of the two AP computer science classes, but he learned it so easily. Like I could just tell, like, oh, this kid probably should have taken computer science A, which is the more challenging one. And even then, he probably would have done really well, as we'll find out. And well, at the end of the year, he does his thing, and he helps me out with, working with students, with coming up with lessons, and he ends up programming even Tetris as like sort of a side project, like challenge if he's not helping me. And while we were doing this, he started programming Tetris and finding limitations because we were using code.org. So then I just let him use a regular IDE and introduce him to object oriented programming, which is computer science A stuff. He then proceeds to learn this probably in a matter of a couple of weeks. And I'm a big fan of ChatGPT and AI for students. I'll make another video about that, but I do firmly believe that our students need to use AI and use it in a way where they learn how to use it, they're comfortable using it, and they use it in a way which enhances their learning, enhances themselves as people. And education really has to keep up with this. Otherwise, when they go out for jobs in the future, the workforce and the expectations with AI out there, uh, they're not going to be able to keep up if they don't know how to leverage AI to help themselves. And I tell this to all my programmers. But besides the point, with AI, with a little guidance from me, he proceeds to end up programming Tetris using object oriented programming completely, from scratch for the most part, at least on Java. And he did it in a way where I could just tell, like, this kid, he just thinks, he's at that level. He has kind of an engineering mindset. And so we ended up with this conversation that really caught me off guard. And the thing that we talked about was math and calculus. And he said something that just baffled me. He said, "I'm not good at math." And I was like, "No, you are really, you're good at math. And he then proceeded, we started, digging deep into this conversation. And he was saying that, um, he's somebody who really prioritizes his time, and he's very unique in the sense that he runs his own business at the age of 18 and before. He is somebody who is willing to take risks and bet on himself, but really put in the effort. He has that entrepreneurial spirit that and you see it in my bullet, I really envy and was really inspired by, because as a 40 something year old grown adult, I still don't have that type of mentality. And it was just amazing to see this kid and learn from him and kind of be inspired to kind of make myself push myself to do more. I've always had confidence issues and insecurities, and it was refreshing to say the least to be able to have conversations with him where he started even giving me little nuggets of sort of encouragement. And I can't be more thankful and grateful to have had a student like that. And we're still connected today. But going back to the math thing, so I then asked him, like, what do you mean? Well, he said, like, in calculus class, his friends do better on tests than him. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Let's get more into the weeds with this. And he said, well, they score higher and there's all these derivatives. And I'm like, well, so you're telling me if you knew the derivatives, the rules, you would be able to do those questions, right? He's like, yeah, for the most part. I'm like, okay, well, it's not a knock on his friends. Like, it's just specifically from his perspective, that's just memorizing. There's a difference between memorizing some formulas and knowing when to use them versus like understanding the math, right? And both are separate skills, but the thing that you didn't do at the least was just memorize stuff, and you chose not to take the time for that because you prioritize doing things that would earn you money and grow your business over something where if you didn't take the time to memorize it, you still end up getting a B on the test without even trying. And I learned that he would do well in calculus for the most part because he does well in physics, where there's more tangible sort of conceptual groundwork to work with. It's less abstract. And then once the calculus got into the physics realm, he would kind of take his physics understanding and kind of reverse engineer the solution methods, right? And hence he'd be able to do the calculus part and do fine on the calculus exams in class. Well, if that doesn't scream you're good at math, then something is absolutely wrong. And this is the side effect of standardized testing being overly focused on. When we try to standardize everything, every teacher, including myself, I'm just as guilty of this, we have a set way of testing and a set way of measuring ability. And, in some respects, there's a logistical, practical reason why we have certain methods of measuring ability. But this student, throughout all 4 years of his high school career, just thought he was bad at math. He literally was one of the smartest people in the building. And I even was looking at linear algebra, and I was kind of, exploring different ways of teaching it, and I was sharing it with him, and he was intuitively just following along and getting excited about like how certain formulas worked. And I'm like, you cannot come out of this school thinking you're bad at math. That's my anecdote. I mean, standardized testing, again, it's not all bad. It's just we can't afford to have students fall through the cracks. Obviously, this student in particular is one of the more outlier cases of high ability. And it makes sense why he flew under the radar, because oftentimes when a student just does well enough, you just assume, well, like they're passing, no big deal. But you would never assume that somebody in that situation would be thinking proactively that they're bad at math. So, we got to discussing a lot of, his sort of pain points with school, and I got to share with mine, and we ended up really relating to one another at very different points in our lives. But, shout out to him. He knows who he is. Very thankful. And that's my story about sort of flaws of standardized testing. I have other things to talk about with that, but figured I'd share that one. It's really cool. All right. Peace. Have a good one.